welcome to the, is this on? Does this sound, okay. All right, welcome to the Saratoga Springs February 12th, 2026 Planning Commission meeting, when we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Miles, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with roll call, and we've got Commissioner Wilden out tonight, so he will be excused, and we've got all other commission members in attendance. And then we will move on to public input. This time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, and comments for subject matter not listed as public hearing on the agenda. Limit of 3 minutes per speaker. Unused time may not be given to another. Time for public input is limited to no more than 15 minutes. Come on up. And so if you can just state your name and address for the record, and can you just push on the mic? There's a little button in the middle and make sure that green light's on.
Very fancy. Can you hear me?
I think so.
Working? Okay, is that better?
Yep. Got it.
Okay, thank you. My name is Emily Pullum, and I live at 1194 West Mahogany Street in Brixton Park, just south of the new high school. And so I'm here on behalf of myself and Brixton neighbors in Brixton Park and the surrounding neighborhoods. I apologize, I knew I'd get nervous, so I brought something, and it will be less than 3 minutes. And I get to watch this high school go up every day in my backyard, and it is so exciting to see it taking shape. And because I'm watching really closely, I care a lot about getting the details right, especially the street design around it. As the high school takes shape, we have a really awesome opportunity to design the infrastructure around in a way that represents how we want to live in Saratoga Springs. And the current concept plan shows over 1,000 parking stalls, and that's a significant investment in car-dependent design. I've also noticed the current drawings show bike lanes adjacent to vehicular traffic on Bonneville, Ensign Drive, and Hallmark Drive. And for a school where we're expecting teenagers on bikes and scooters mixing with new drivers and parent drop-off, that's a design choice worth reconsidering. Meanwhile, lots of students will live within a mile or two of the high school in either Silver Lake or Brixton Park, close enough to bike or scooter very safely if we design for it. I've read through the staff reports, I've read through the transportation master plan. I think that there is interest and desire to try to incorporate some of the paths for walking safe to school within the trails. I see Joel over there. And separated paths, not painted bike lanes next to the vehicles, would reduce traffic congestion, and it could improve student safety and align with the goals in the transportation master plan. So I know that there's a lot of interest in this approach, and as we're building things, and as this is the topic of the hour, I just wanted to express my concern about that specific item and advocate for designs around the high school that our community can be proud of for a long time into the future. Thank you.
Emily, thank you so much for that. As you're looking at that, has there been any anything that you've thought of that you could share with the city?
Absolutely. So at one point, and this was back in the spring, I sat down with a group of you. Yeah. And with one of the engineers and I talked to Joel about this specifically, about saying, hey, we don't need to necessarily get larger right-of-way, but the amount that's allowed for that bike lane, attach it, add it to the amount that's allowed for the sidewalks, and give those cyclists and scooters or whoever's using that space a buffer. Similar to, but not quite as wide as we see on Redwood Road. And that was mentioned to me that that's a very possible thing to do, though I don't know in the transportation master plan if we see a road cross-section that looks like that specifically for the size of roads that we're building there, minor and major, some major arterials around the school.
Okay, Thank you so much for taking that effort and
Yeah.
legwork. That's incredibly helpful, and I really
Thank you.
just makes everything go better. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll move to business item. The commission will discuss without public comment and may either make a recommendation to the city council or approve the following items as needed. We'll start with business item number 1, but before that, we'll go ahead and hear from Commissioner Miles.
Thank you, Chair. As publicly stated in the public packet, the owner is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That is my current employer, and so just in an effort to prevent any appearance of a conflict of interest, I don't have any direct involvement in this project, but just to avoid any appearance of that, I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself on this item.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner
Thank you.
Miles. And so that is public item number 1, High School 722, preliminary plat and site plan located at approximately northwest corner of Ensign Drive and Mountain View Corridor. Frank Poley of Alpine School District is applicant, and senior planner David Jellin. And if the applicant wants to join, we're happy to have you do that. And if you do want to make any comment, please just state your name and address for the record.
Great. Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Council, Commission. As stated, this is a preliminary plat and site plan for Alpine School District, High School number 722, located at the northwest corner of Ensign Drive and Mountain View Corridor. I don't know why my clicker's giving me problems here. It is on, and it was working before. Oh, there we go. Now it's working. Or now it's. Maybe I try turning this. There we go. Well, maybe. I don't know. Scott, I may be. Just say beep and he'll move things forward for me. Okay. Will you go next slide, Scott? It is plugged in, yeah. It is. And when I was like over here, I don't know. I'll have Scott move it for me. So you can see it here on the location map where that is located, just west of the temple site there and north of Brixton Park. Thank you. Next slide, please. So there are a number of items within code compliance that shall comply for the school. I wanted to state beforehand, we'll get into a few of these with my presentation this evening. Of note, though, there is a development agreement for this property. The school is still working together with the city to come to agreement on that development agreement. It hasn't been settled yet, and so a lot of those items that shall comply are items that are still being worked out through the development agreement. The plan is to take this together, this preliminary plat and site plan application with the rezone that was previously brought before the Planning Commission, all together at once those items have been worked out. But to keep things moving along, that's why we have the preliminary plat and site plan here this evening for you. Next slide. So here's the preliminary plat. The red line version was included in your packet. I've included a clean version here just so that it gives a picture of what's going on with the site. In total, this is 178 acres almost. That being said, there are 3 parcels shown here and lot 2 that were not connected to the rezone. As stated on the plat, parcel A, B, and C are not to be developed at this point in time, and Lot 2 will develop at a later phase with a separate site plan submittal and rezone application. So the school site itself is Lot 1. It is that 61 and a half roughly acre size property, and that is consistent with the rezone that was brought before you guys. There is a condition on the preliminary plat that I did want to note, just that it'll be in compliance with all of city code requirements. They had a few things that needed to be cleaned up, which is why that redlined version was included in your packets. Next slide. This is the proposed site plan for the property, showing the layout and the various amenities that will be on the school site. There was an addendum to the packet that was sent to you when the school was going through their plan submittal with the city. There was an alternate layout that included a driving range, mostly parking area. They're at kind of the northern portion of the lot between parking lot B and the soccer fields. That was approved with their state permit, and that is the design that they are carrying forward. So I wanted to make sure that you guys got that addendum document showing that alternate site, kind of as shown here with that parking lot in that area. Next slide. So one of the shall comply conditions with this is in our code, the land use authority is the determiner for the parking requirement. Here they have shown just under 1,300 parking stalls. There's a number of criteria as outlined in the staff report that the land use authority is to use in evaluating whether the parking is sufficient for the property. I will note, and I failed to mention it in my staff report, at the state level, there's a requirement for schools that the parking requirement cannot exceed what is consistent with other similar uses. In talking with the school, this is the most parking that they would have at a high school in the district, what they're proposing here. So there's 1,300 stalls, and they can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but that is my understanding, is that this would be the most parked school. So next slide. Here's the landscaping plan. Landscaping is one of the things that we cannot regulate as a city. I've provided it here for your reference just so that you have an idea of what that landscaping will look like. Next slide. Similarly with the elevations, we are restricted in how we can evaluate the elevations for a school by the state law. So again, these are included in your packet for reference of what this will look like. Next slide. It is roughly a 390,000 square foot building that they are building as part of this. Next slide. With that, if you guys have any questions, if there are any questions for staff or for the applicant, we will be happy to answer those at this time.
Okay, did the applicant want to add anything to the presentation tonight?
No. Appreciate David and staff for putting it together.
Okay. Any commissioner comment? Commissioner Hale?
Thank you, Chair. David, thank you for a complete packet. And as you indicated, we're looking at a preliminary plat and site plan. So we're at the beginning, even though a lot of work has gone into this. A couple of questions that I have, and you mentioned that we're looking at a total plotted of 177.87 acres, and the high school will take up 61.56. Can I ask the applicant, what is the plan for the remainder of that property?
Go to the preliminary plat.
The remainder of the property belongs to the LDS Church, so we're not the property owner of the
Okay,
rest
so-
of it. So I don't know what
Okay,
their
so
plan is.
Again, we're looking at an area that's 177, but you're purchasing only about 62 acres?
Correct.
Okay, that answers that for me. Again, understanding that tonight, we're just looking at this preliminary plat and site plan, that the rezoning, the general plan and associated development agreement has to go to city council. And you're very aware of that. But a couple of things that we're looking at is we're going from a community plan, a planned community to a low residential or low density residential to institutional and civic. You know, as I look through this, and David, you address this very, you know, there's a lot still to do, but everything is a comply or shall comply. So we're on the right path. We know what's going on. You talked about the development agreement, there needs to be some coming together a little bit from that perspective. You know, you had 15 recommendations that were very specific, dealing with traffic, secondary water, stormwater pollution, preservation plan, long-term stormwater management agreement, and then reimbursement agreement for the things that the city are going to participate with you on that. Again, from my perspective, you understand that there's a lot to go. I was very happy to see that the comply and shall comply are right with our plan and what we need to be doing. A couple of things that I would share. As a citizen came before us, I'm inclined to say if there's anything that we can do from a bike path or a path of getting our children to school, we ought to make sure that it's safe in every aspect. That would be my suggestion. Although, you know, to fit with the transportation plan and the master plan and the cost of doing those things, I would just suggest that we do everything in our power to protect our kids. I was very impressed with your 3D rendering of what the building's going to look like. This is going to take care of our needs for many, many, many years, and how hard school funding is typically, we've got to do it right. We really have to do it right because every citizen in the city pays towards this plan. So from my perspective, again, thank you. As I look at this, it's well in line with where we need to be going. We'll turn it over to the city council to get the other pieces together, but that's everything that I had. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Any other commissioner comment? Commissioner Mann?
Yes, I would just like to second what Commissioner Hill just stated regarding citizen Emily, is it? Emily's comments, very well thought out, and you really did your research and took your time looking through the best solutions for this, and I really couldn't agree more. If there's a way for us to go about this the way that she suggested, I think that would be a fabulous solution, and I agree with her contentions with the existing plan.
Okay. Any other commissioner? Thank you, Commissioner Mann. Any other commissioner comment? I've got a couple questions. I don't know if you'll have the answer for this one, but do you know how much parking is at Westlake?
There's approximately about 900 stalls at Westlake.
Okay. And how much bigger is this new school than Westlake is?
It's about 20,000 square feet bigger.
So student population size, any guesstimate on about how many more students we're going to be seeing then?
Not anymore. The student population size is designed for about 2,000 kids here, which is very similar to Westlake. It's just a different design than Westlake, so some of that additional square footage is circulation space, mechanical space, not necessarily a bunch more space, you know, as far as number of classrooms at the school.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because I've got 3 kids at Westlake, and it is like bumper cars in that parking lot. Frequently I ask, does anyone know where the new dent on the car came from? So I'm glad to see that we're getting more parking there. You know, ideally, I would love to have great walking paths, great biking paths, great scooter paths, and hopefully that is part of what we are continuing to work with. I do have a question for David. David, the land that's going to the school is low density. The rest of the land that the church is keeping, is it all low density also, or is it higher density?
No, for the most part, it's all low density. It's all part of the, to my knowledge, it is all part of the district area plan area. And so there's an allotted amount of density already in that area. A lot of it is planned community because it's part of that area. There was a portion of this that was annexed into the city about a year ago, and that piece of it is doesn't have a formal designation on it, and so it's a mix. Some of it is for that planned community, and some of it is that low density residential on here.
Okay. And so, I mean, hopefully this increase in parking, 400 new parking stalls will help with the overflow parking. But Westlake already has, I mean, they've got a significant amount of on-street parking that's happening that, I mean, I think the city makes a pretty penny on those tickets that they write for it. I know I've paid a few of them. So do we anticipate, like, is there an area that overflow parking will be able to go into, or on-street parking should this parking not be enough? And I mean, I guess they're making it work over at Westlake, right?
Yeah, there's not any plan in terms of overflow parking. Like I said, they had that alternate lot, that area that will be the driving range, but chiefly will be for parking, that they were able to get accepted with their bid to the state. And so that adds that 220 lot area, that brings it up to that 1,276 total. So hopefully that will help.
Okay. And then I know this is the preliminary plan, but are we looking at additional biking lanes, scooter lanes, walking lanes?
There's discussions happening with it. There's discussions happening with the Trails Master Plan, but Scott could probably answer that question better than I could.
Currently, they would just have to meet the city standards, which are the bike lanes that are going to be alongside of Bonneville and Ensign, which wouldn't be separated, but it's the current city standard unless the applicant chose to do something separate on that.
Because the bike lane, or I guess the sidewalks, it's around Westlake are pretty big, right? Like so these will be a lot smaller.
The ones along the streets are probably going to be your standard 5 foot, but the interior to the school, I'd say you're probably going to get some larger sidewalks. There's a trail that's going to be running along Mountain View Corridor, so that's going to extend to the school itself. I don't know, there's no designed connection from Mountain View, or from that trail into the schoolyard at this time, other than the along Ensign or Hallmark to get from the trail to the school, but that's just following the standards as well.
So there's no plan for the trail to connect from Mountain View to, there's not a really clear trail connecting Mountain View to the new school.
Just the streets, trails, the sidewalks on the trails, but the Mountain View is,
I was trying to, if you go left on it, it should bring up, yeah.
So the trail crossing, it's kind of vague there, but it's on the bottom right-hand corner. It's not all the way over to the current Mountain View corridor right now. It's probably about 150 feet to the west of Mountain View corridor. So that trail will cross, and then that shadow on the right side next to the pinkish color line there, that's the trail that runs along the back Mountain View corridor, but there'll be sidewalks on the south that'll run to the private school roadway there in the middle, and that'll have sidewalks on both sides. And that there's also the access on the north side of that trail to get to the parking lot B area and the soccer courts there. But there's nothing like in the middle to connect, and it wouldn't be necessary to have one connect there.
Yeah, in the middle, right? But I mean, the high schools tend to be that spot where like Little League football and practice gets held, right? And so, even outside of school hours, you have a lot of children, some much younger than high school age, who are utilizing this area. And so having great trail systems set up so that these kids can get there safely, it should be a priority. So I think we've all stated that pretty much, and I think City Council does a great job of hearing that, so hopefully they can push that along a little further. And then Commissioner Rather.
I do have a question. So where does the city's authority end as far as those connections, right? Because the school has some state regulations they comply with, is that right? So we can kind of come to a certain point, is that true?
There are different regulations, and I don't know that I'm the best to speak on them, but the school does have different authorities where we can't necessarily enforce a lot of things, but they have to meet the city's codes and standards essentially when it comes to everything off-site. And that's kind of, David might know more on that as well, but it's pretty much meeting our codes and standards for the most part with all of our utilities and streets.
And David, could I ask you another question, which is, where are we at in the site planning process and the types of improvements or connections that are being talked about? When and how are those going to be implemented and review, looked at by this body and the city council and so forth?
So as far as the school site itself, this is it, the site plan. This is the plan for the property, so.
Does that mean that the types of connections and sidewalks, bike paths, is that part of this? Will that change beyond this point, or is there still opportunity for that to change, I guess is my question.
It's probably going to be minimal changes, but there's still some discussion it's primarily on the crossing of Ensign that's going on, but other than that, as far as trails, it's probably not going to go beyond much other than that.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, any other commissioner comment? Oh, Commissioner Mann?
One quick one after hearing, am I on? No. So just after hearing what we've discussed, it sounds like, our hands are tied as a city because we're only holding the school to city standards according to what the standards are for bike lanes and trails, right?
Yes, that's what we can hold any applicant to, not necessarily just the school, but
Right.
those are our standards, so we can't tell an applicant that they have to give us something beyond that. So
Right.
they're welcome to give us something if they want to, but
Sure.
we just can't require that out of them at this point.
So it's my feeling that if our city standards in regards to bike lanes, particularly when we're discussing schools, if those standards are not upholding the highest level of safety for our kids in the city, then our standards are not high enough.
It is something that's being worked on. It's not going to happen in time for this project. It's unfortunate, but it is something I know that's being worked on in the background, not necessarily through me, but there is proposals and stuff, conversations that are coming in probably near future that are going to discuss that, but it's unfortunate that it's just can't happen in time for the project.
Okay, well, I would just compel the applicant to please consider our concerns for our students. I'm sorry to say this, we have some terrible drivers in Saratoga Springs, and the giggles will tell you that I'm telling you the truth. And we've had children hit and killed by cars here more times than I can count. And it's really a serious concern. And I hope that you'll consider, you know, the suggestions of Emily and our commissioners up here.
Thank you, Commissioner Mann. Any other commissioner comment? Okay, and I would just say, so for the most part, the trails that I'm thinking about and concerned about are not necessarily on the property, right? They're the trails that would access the property, which wouldn't be the applicant's responsibility, but as a city, I think what Commissioner Mann said is really speaks really loud and clear for what I would say as well. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Seeing no other commissioner comment, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the requested preliminary plat and site plan for Alpine School District High School 722, located at the northwest corner of Ensign Drive in Mountain View Quarter, with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Do we have a second on this motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mann. Any questions on this motion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you, Commission.
Thank you. All right, and we'll go ahead and invite Commissioner Miles back. And while we're inviting him back, we'll go ahead and move on to our second business item, the approval of minutes from January 29, 2026. And I will go ahead and any questions on those or statements on that? Commissioner comment on that? Okay, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on the approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the January 29th, 2026 Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Miles. And do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that passes as well. We'll move to public hearings. The commission will accept public comment and may make a recommendation to the City Council for the following items. Item number 1, amendment to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapter 19.8, sign regulations. Citywide, city-initiated, planner Sam Stout, and Code Compliance Inspector Manny Monroy. Never heard of him.
I think that item may have been pulled.
Yeah, that item is to be tabled this evening.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So we'll go ahead. Do we need to vote to table it?
I think you should open up the public hearing and then
Yeah,
make a
that-
motion.
Sounds like a great idea. So we'll go ahead and open for public hearing on that. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public hearing and then we'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Are we just looking at delaying this item?
Tabling it.
I'll move that we delay the amendment to Title 19, Chapter 19.09, off-street parking to a later date to be determined by staff.
It's
So
the
we're actually
1918
on item 1.
What was that?
It's the 1918 item.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. So it's the chapter then?
1918.
Okay.
Sign regulations.
Okay. Amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapter 1918, sign regulations, city-wide, city-initiated, and so we delay that to a later date under the direction of staff.
Okay, and do we have a second on that? Well, sorry, hold on, that works to just say delay, we don't have to say table. Perfect, okay, all right, yep, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Miles. And any questions on that? Okay, and we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Right, and that passes to be delayed. All right, moving on to item number 2, amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapter 19.09, off-street parking, citywide initiated, and planner Joel Temple.
Thank you. Let's see, okay, so this is working. So this, sorry, David, just got to click it right. So this code amendment is looking at the provisioning of bicycle parking being added to our off-street parking requirements. So I just wanted to give a quick overview, just so you kind of have an idea in your head, and then I'll go into some of the motivations and where we're pulling this from. So it's roughly, most studies find that about 1 to 5% of mode share or travel is done by bicycle. And so we're basically just taking our standard parking requirements and saying if 1 to 5% of those are on a bike instead of a car, let's use that number. So where before we're asking for 4 per 1,000 at a typical retail or commercial use, we're saying one short-term stall per 5,000. And I'll go into detail about the difference between a short-term and a long-term, but just wanted to give you an idea of where those numbers are coming from. And then in terms of how, maybe it's not working. In terms of how this would be funded, it would be concurrent development, same as any other application where you're installing your trails, your sidewalks, that sort of thing. This would just come with the development. In terms of existing development, if a business or the city wanted to install them, a local nonprofit called Bike Utah does free installation, so you're just paying for the rack itself, and then they'll come out and install them for you. So there are options to help mitigate that cost as well. Next slide. So the motivation for this, similar to Emily's comment and several comments we've heard from you all as well as the City Council, is request for a stronger multimodal network. And one of the things we realized in the next slide here, we hosted an event at City Hall back in the spring with some residents from Saratoga Springs, Lehigh, and American Fork, where we were biking from the American Fork front runner station to our new City Hall. And as you can see, when we got to our destination, there were no bike racks. A lot of talk in transportation planning is about the last mile. You have your bus stop, you have your bike trail, and then it's that last mile that's really tricky. And in this case, it was the final step, right? Where do you lock up your bike once you get there? And so in this next slide as well, this is outside of the Fizz. This employee is obviously biking to work and has to lock it up to the tree because there's nowhere for them to lock it up. So we're just realizing that there's that final step is really crucial to, are you going to take that bike trip if you don't know that there's a place for you to safely lock it up when you get there? And then also a huge part of this is just our city demographics. The most recent census found that about 47% of our population is under the age of 18. And even assuming that 16 to 18-year-olds are driving in the state of Utah, a recent study found that only 48% of 16-year-olds are getting their licenses. So even of those few, from 16 to 18, a large percentage of our population is not driving. And in terms of having family-friendly, child-oriented infrastructure, bike infrastructure is an answer to that. So we wanted to really emphasize that this is something that Saratoga Springs residents are asking for. This is something we've heard the council and the commission asking for. And so we wanted to make sure we're making our network usable and attractive right up to that final step. Just a really quick overview of some of the direct benefits that come from such a network. You get reduced congestion, vehicle miles traveled go down by about 10%. And I should mention, this is when you go from a low quality network to a moderate quality network, which is, I think, sort of where we're at. We're right in between those two stages where we have lots of really stellar infrastructure like the Jordan River Trail, the Utah Lakeshore Trail. We have some fantastic networks, and it's just getting to that next level. And this is where you see the most significant improvements. You get the highest returns in mobility when you go from a low to a moderate network density. You see your mode share increase from 25% to a 900% increase in the proportion of active trips. So when you hit that tipping point, you really do start seeing a big change in mode share and in travel. And you see between 10 and 17 times less fatalities. And in terms of the indirect benefits, you're going to see reduced mortality risk. People aren't sitting in their cars as much. There's a positive impact on home values. There's increased retail rents, worker productivity. Generates roughly twice the jobs as money spent on driving infrastructure. So $1 spent on bike infrastructure generates more economic revenue for a city. And then it also lowers transportation costs when you're not having to get a car for every 16-year-old in the family. They're able to bike around and they're able to get to their friend's house, and you don't have to have a car to get around. You see those costs go down for households. And then, of course, reductions in CO2 emissions and particulate matter. And just want to draw sort of a case study. I know we're not Portland, and I'm not proposing we become Portland, but Portland invested about $60 million over the last 40 years to get from a place similar to where we are to the nation's leader in bike infrastructure. So it doesn't take huge investments. It really just takes key investments in the right spots to make a network really flourish. And just for comparison's sake, that's about 1 mile of Mountain View corridor. Another great thing that we have is we're actually a pretty flat city as far as Utah goes. We have some hills. You can get up into Mount Saratoga, you can get into Wildflower, but near the lake shore, it's actually relatively flat, which makes it easy to get around as well. And so this code amendment is drawing from the best practices in our region. So we're looking at Eagle Mountain, we're looking at Harriman, Bluffdale, and Lehigh. And then Provo and Park City are a little bit outside of our neighborhood, but they have recently been awarded gold level bicycle friendly communities by the American League of Bicyclists. So we really wanted to draw from sort of that national standard of what works. And so the first distinction to understand is the difference between a short-term and a long-term stand. So a short-term stall is a customer. It's someone who's there for less than 2 hours. They're parking it outside the cafe. They're leaving it at the restaurant. They're running in and grab their groceries really quick. It's a short-term user. Long-term is the employee who shows up. They bike to the office. They need a place to leave it all day. They don't want to leave it out on the street where they can't see it. It needs to be a little bit more secure and a little more permanent. Next slide, please. And so we also look at, this is from Provo and Park City. They have really clear standards for exactly what types of stands should be used. The reason being, on the next slide, when you design a stand wrong, it gets used wrong. And so it's not always clear how a stall is supposed to be used. And so the type we're proposing makes it very clear how it should be used. It's harder to steal a bike from them. It's more apparent how to utilize them. It's easier to lock 2 bikes to one instead of, you see here, they're being used horizontally, and so 5 of your stalls are being taken up by 1 bike. And in terms of location standards, if it's thrown in the back of the parking lot behind the store, no one's going to know it's there, and no one's going to want to use it because it doesn't feel safe. So we wanted to emphasize that they need to be weather protected where possible, they need to be highly visible, they need to be convenient, no more than 50 feet from a primary entrance. And if it's long-term, it needs to be ground level. We don't need to be walking our bikes 3 stories up to the top level. It needs to be accessible for everyone. And just to give some sort of examples of what this would actually look like when we apply it to some businesses in our area, I looked at one of the buildings in Steel Ridge with the new soda shop, the Twisted Sugar, and I think there's a nail salon and a barber going in there. If you're looking at these numbers, it would be 2 short-term stalls and 1 long-term stall. So we're looking at 1 stall for employees to use, assuming about 1 to 5% of them are biking to work, and then 2 stalls out front for customers to use. So it's not a huge investment, but it's enough that I know if I'm going to that building, I know there's a place to leave my bicycle. For a bigger store, Smith's, I realized I kind of fat-fingered that one and accidentally typed 1 per 2,000 instead of 1 per 5,000. So it would not be 55 stalls, it would be 22 stalls, 22 short-term stalls for a building like our Smith's and 10 long-term for employees to use. And then something like a new school that's housing 2,800 students and 100 staff. That one is split into 1 per 20 students, 1 stall per 20 students short-term, and 1 per 10 employees long-term. So that's where you'd get these numbers from. And just to sort of give a visual of how much space that takes up, all of these would house 10 bicycles. So I think the largest one here is the one on the top, and it's about 200 square feet. So not huge, and able to hit the long-term requirements for any of those examples on the last slide. And then this would be more for like an office park. But this room is about 1,300 square feet and houses 120 stalls. So this would be for a much larger campus, but just to get a sort of an idea of the types of amenities that could be provided. And then this is just the language from your packets, the actual code amendment itself. I'm happy to spend time on any parts of this that y'all would like some details on.
Okay, before we spend more time on it, let's go ahead and open for public comment. Seeing none, we will go ahead and close public comment. And then let's open for commissioner comment. Commissioner Mann?
Thank you. First, I would just like to say I think this is wonderful. I think that we needed this as part of the code. I have a teenage son that he's actually driving age, but he doesn't want to drive. So he drives his bike to work, and he worked at Arby's, and it was a big problem. The manager ended up letting him park his bike inside the restaurant for his shift because there was nowhere to park his bike, including at Smith's. My second thought is that I wonder if perhaps the requirement might be too high for a grocery store, just because like he wanted to be able to go to Smith's, but he's like, I'm not going to carry my groceries home on my bike, and it seems like 22 stalls at the grocery store might be excessive.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we can look at reducing, yeah.
Okay, that's all for me.
All right, and Commissioner Rather?
Yeah, I just want to second that. I think it's a great step as far as kind of building the trail and bike network. Like you said, I think when there's those little gaps, it makes it really hard. Like if I'm her son, like I might not take my bike, right? Because those kind of things make it really hard. So I think it's great, and I ride my bike a lot, and my family does. So I think it's awesome. I was going to ask about, does it alter the vehicular parking in any way? Like, can you get parking reductions or anything like that?
Other cities typically allow for parking reductions. I know parking is something that the council feels very strongly about in our city, so we didn't add any language like that. It's certainly something we could bring another draft of at a later date. I think the typical standard I've seen is for every 6 stalls of bicycle parking provided, 1 vehicle stall can be removed. And for every 1 long-term stall provided, 1 vehicle stall could be removed. So to sort of incentivize, if you're not having all of your employees have to drive to work, then you're able to reduce that parking.
And that might make sense it might make sense here at some point, and I know it probably makes sense in some more urban areas where you get those kind of reductions. Maybe it's not as applicable here. It might, yeah, anyways. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think it's great.
Commissioner Hill?
Joel, thank you. Very in-depth, lots of information. I'm one of those that from the Northwest, from Portland area. I grew up in the Portland area and grew up with this focus on walking and riding bikes. It's probably 10 years ago, they now have just a bike bridge over the Willamette River, which is a large river for pedestrians and for bikes, to take that off the bridges that were really scary to be walking and riding. So the time, effort, and money that we put in, I think is well worth us updating our plan on that. Secondarily, I've shared my thoughts on this quite a bit with the lack of the Utah Transit Authority providing buses in our community. If we don't do a good job of having walk pathways and bicycle pathways, we will have our kids going into cars and adding to the congestion. And that's not going to be something that's going to be addressed soon, I don't think. And so as a city, we have control, and updating our Chapter 19 in this area, we know that things coming forward are going to be at a higher level, a more safe level. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Miles? Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you, fellow commissioners. I think the presentation was very clear and very helpful. One of the questions I have, if this is proposed new language for city code, we've cited Smiths and those type of stores. I'm assuming this would apply, though, to anything new developed. So we're not going to see this happen for the current build-out that we have, Walmart, Costco, these other big developments that are already in stores where a lot of people are coming and wanting to potentially, I don't know how you ride your bike to Costco and take anything home, but I just want to be clear that this would only be going forward. There's no retroactive or some sort of requirement on existing building.
That's correct. If any of those pads were to apply for a change of use and a new tenant were to come in, then it would apply at that point.
Gotcha.
And with existing development, we can certainly encourage folks to reach out to Bike Utah and say, maybe it's something that the city wants to explore, matching grant programs. I know some communities have done things like that, but yeah, we wouldn't be able to require existing development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Miles. I have a couple of questions myself. One, with the long-term bike parking, I have a concern around cost with that, and not the cost of them putting it in, but if that is there and people are being charged for it, is there any regulation around making sure that that doesn't become a fee that someone would have to pay for?
There's nothing that we're requiring. The way I've typically seen this applied is as sort of an amenity. It's an offering to encourage people to leave their car, and then you're allowing more customer parking that you're not having to provide for employees. So I've never personally seen a workplace try to charge employees for that sort of thing, but we don't have language that would restrict it one way or the other. I worry that would happen, right? And so, and especially if we looked at anything like adding in a reduction in parking stalls, and then to later have a fee that someone's collecting off of that would feel not okay to me. And then specifically, do we have, what are the requirements for like a park and ride? Is there long-term parking? And I think that we should actually look at that a little bit different. And is that a little bit different than what? It is. I didn't include it on these slides. In the exhibit on the packet, the full parking table is in there. And so for like TOD zoning, which we don't currently have, but at a future date, if we had a park and ride, if we had a BRT stop, that sort of thing, it has much higher parking requirements. So we tried to anticipate the sorts of uses where you would see a lot higher mode share. For example, multifamily housing. We, I think, have one per 10 units, or maybe. Do you mind actually going back to the?
Is that
very first slide?
one long-term parking per 10 units?
It is. The idea being that multifamily residents tend to bike more than single-family homeowners do, and so just promoting that as well.
See, that's another spot where I would worry about having a charge associated with it, right? Of like, okay, well, if you want to use this long-term parking for your bike, you're gonna have to pay for it, and which doesn't seem to be aligning with what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I imagine it would be similar to if an apartment wanted to charge for their parking as well. I don't know that that's something we typically regulate, or if I know there are minimum off-street parking requirements, but say you wanted to have a third car in your apartment.
Yeah, which would make sense that if there's additional parking that's not required parking, that they could charge for that, right? That's additional parking that they've set up that's not regulated by the city, right? But this, where we're saying this is something that is a required thing that should be available to everyone, if we then have a charge that's coming from it, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that feels like it wouldn't be permissible for the same reason that we wouldn't allow someone to charge a townhome resident to park in their own garage or to park in their off-street parking. Because it is our city code requirement, you have to provide that parking. I don't think you can charge for access to something that's mandatory.
I think we should add some verbiage to this, that they're
We can
around a
certainly
cost.
take a look at that and see we might need legal to weigh in on that as well and just make sure. But yeah, we can certainly look at language and see what that might look like and if that's something that we can get added to it.
So would it be best to table this at this point then, or?
I think with you being the recommending body, you could give us suggestions, and we can add that language to then take to City Council.
Okay.
So we can incorporate the recommendations from the commission, and then allow City Council to discuss those.
Okay. And then y'all meet with legal and make sure.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. That sounds
Is that-
sounds like a great
is
plan
that
to
right?
me.
Okay.
We have bike parking at my work in Salt Lake, and it's in the breezeway, but nobody uses it because y'all get your bikes stolen from there. And so we all just bring our bikes into our offices and the staff kitchen, which doesn't work either. So this would be awesome at my work.
The old City Hall, I stored my bike under my desk. The new City Hall has great bike parking, so it works.
Yay. Okay. I'm all about this. Okay.
And I apologize. I should actually mention there's a condition in this section. Section 4 of the code is a discussion around adding shower facilities. And that was one that, looking at sort of those gold standard facilities, this is a requirement that some cities are asking for very large places. So this isn't going to be like your tiny little mom and pop shop. We're talking, right, with retail, it's over 25,000 square feet. So it's like a big box use. Or these other non-retail uses like an office park. So that was one that we just wanted to get the commission's input on. Just while we were looking at these sort of national level standards, wanted to make sure that was at least included in the conversation, but included as a condition of approval, whether to include that or to not.
Can you give us some more information on so this would be big box retail like Costco or bigger?
Yeah, so for retail, it would be starting at 25,000 square feet. So looking at pretty large footprints. And so that would be providing like lockers and a shower. So if employees are biking to work, they're not having to be worried about showing up all sweaty, knowing that they can still, perform their job duties.
I'll go ahead and weigh in first on that that one's too far for me. Any other commission members want to weigh in on that?
Is this a national trend, or?
You tend to see it in larger cities. I believe this was this specific language is from Seattle, but I think I want to say Park City has some kind of similar language as well. So it's not unheard of in smaller places, but it definitely tends to be in more metropolitan areas.
Have we floated this with entertainment, art, recreation, industrial, retail within our area? Have we gotten any feedback on this type of requirement?
Like from business owners?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't, no.
Yeah, I would agree with the chair that it just seems a little maybe premature unless we see a real need for it. And I don't know, putting these kinds of requirements on new buildings could slow down the growth a bit. But I would suggest that maybe requirement 4, we recommend that it not be implemented until we have more empirical data from those that would be required to do that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rather.
Yeah, I actually think it's pretty useful. I don't know if, these thresholds that sound like we're taken from some other standards, and we may not be a community that's quite, the same as those. But, in my professional capacity as an architect, there's certain buildings that we do this. And I actually think it's worth kind of continuing to look at. I agree with my fellow commissioners that there's, I don't, sometimes it's hard to force things into spaces that people don't want. That said, sometimes I think people don't realize what might be useful and they haven't had it before or haven't seen it or haven't experienced it or used it and don't know what that could offer and provide. If it's there, you might use it, right? So I don't know that I'd be ready to, put that into the language just yet, but I think it's worth kind of continuing to pursue personally.
So would this be open to the public?
The long-term facilities are primarily for employees. So typically, your short term is for the public. It's for people staying for less than 2 hours, and a long-term stall is supposed to be secured, protected. So it has to be inside a parking structure, or inside a building. So typically, only going to see employee access to those sorts of spaces.
So the showers would be employee access only.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think they're great.
Commissioner Miles.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a, maybe there could be, a benefit, but I'm wondering if there's a way to move forward with the recommendation, if this is to study this or to look at this, further without having number 4 as a requirement. And then as we, get more data, more information on this to revisit. But I agree. Maybe there is a benefit at some point, but I'm just trying to think in Saratoga Springs today, somebody biking and the business being required to do this. I mean, is there liability issues? Someone slips and falls and all sorts of things that could come along with that. So, yeah, just some thoughts.
All right. Commissioner Roman.
I'm from the Northeast, and some companies have this. I like to see the cost impact. It could be beneficial, so that's what I'd like to see. Because I want to your point, really impact growth. So, but it does come in handy for people who work like double shifts, other places like that, or things like that. So, but.
Yeah, I love the idea of this. I love going down this direction. I think this is just a little bit further than we're ready to take the leap on for Saratoga at this point. So with that, my recommendation is that the motion, the condition number 4 is a shall not. So, any other commissioner comment? All right, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion. Some of you OGs have got to get in. Let's go.
I'll go ahead. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval with the exception of requirement 4 of the proposed code amendment to Chapter 1909 with the findings and conditions in the staff report. I will add one other caveat, is that we do further research and get back to us on how this is perceived out in the real world, in the business world.
So I think you could just say condition number 4 is a shall not be included.
Okay.
But the chair also, you wanted verbiage surrounding the potential future costs to the users of the
The
final
long-term
facilities.
parking area.
Which I totally forgot in the meantime. You want to add that?
Okay, we'll start over. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation a recommendation of approval with the exception of requirement 4 and a requirement that a city proposed bike parking be without a fee?
Long-term parking.
Is that appropriate?
Long-term.
Long-term city parking be without a fee. Amendment to Chapter 19.9 with findings and conditions in the staff report.
And if you'll just mention the way that it was put in the staff report, I know you had mentioned it before, but just for the sake of making sure that it's consistent, you can say that condition number 1, as labeled in the staff report, be shall not.
Okay. So, we'll add, because this will be the third time, section 19.9.11 for shall not be included.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hill. That was a hard one. And any second on this motion? Thank you, Commissioner Mann. And any questions on the motion? Hearing none, we'll now vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, and this one passes. Yay for bikes. All right, public hearings number 3, amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapter 19.08, home occupations, citywide initiated, and Planner Joel is going to get us on this one again.
Okay. So this came about because we received a couple of applications for home occupation businesses from folks living in townhomes and apartments. And the way our code is currently written, a Class 1 low-impact home occupation, as you see here, is anything that has less than two people visiting per day and doesn't have any on-premise employees. And those are allowed in any type of home: a single-family home, a townhome, or an apartment. Whereas a Class 2 or Class 3, which had more than 2 or had an on-premise employee or things like that, or was the office for a construction, landscaping, delivery type business, those were only allowed in single-family homes. And so we realized that we were seeing this kind of inequitable, this issue where, say somebody wants to have a townhome nail salon, and they have 3 customers stop by on a Saturday afternoon, we would have to reject it on the grounds that it's in a townhome. Even though they could be visiting 3 hours apart, they park in the driveway, no other types of problems. On the grounds that it is not a single-family home, we would have to deny those types of applications. Similarly, if somebody was a business owner and they parked their commercial vehicle at the home, they were now dispatching a construction vehicle from the house. But say you're just a tradesperson who has your own work truck and park it in the driveway, that would have been allowed, but as soon as it's your business, it would no longer be allowed under code. And so we wanted to instead bring the proposal that we remove the language around the type of home being the restriction and instead tighten up the standards that are applicable to all home occupations. So that includes the parking regulations, where employees have to park, that sort of thing, and making sure that the negative impacts of a business are what we're actually restricting and not regulating whether or not you're allowed to have a business if you live in a home or a townhome. So some of the major changes in section 1, just getting rid of the line about single-family homes, allowing all types of home occupations in any type of home. Employees must park in off-street parking, and that home occupations have to provide adequate off-street parking. And then any commercial vehicles have to be parked off-street. So you can't park your work truck on the street. You can park it in the garage, you can park it in the driveway, but it has to be off-street. And then any commercial equipment, so if that's a Bobcat, a trailer, what have you, that needs to be screened in the same way that we already required. Initially, we required commercial vehicles to also be screened, but again, it felt like that sort of unfair application where I work for a business, I'm allowed to park my work truck in my driveway, but as soon as it's my business, I can't park it there. So instead, we wanted to just say, okay, anyone can park as long as it's off-street parking. And then we also wanted to require traffic and parking plans. Right now, the language was maybe suggestive, and wanted to make sure we're actually getting those plans. We know where you're going to park everyone, how you're going to pick up and drop off children. If it's a daycare with 8 people getting dropped off all at the same time, how are you doing that and not parking in front of your neighbor's driveway? So we also added language about that you will not impede access to neighboring driveways. And then we also spoke with our code enforcement team to make sure that we actually gave them the teeth to be able to enforce this. If this is being violated, we can remove that business license and that home occupation and revoke it.
I have some questions on this. So is there any, so if a home, once we grant the home occupation license, is there ever a time where we go back and say, okay, you're still meeting our standards, or?
So every year they have to renew their business license, and we ensure that they still have all the necessary licensing and they haven't expanded the home occupation to be larger than what was initially approved. So for example, if a daycare was approved for eight students and now they're having 12 or 15, we require them to come back and fill out a new application, and it has to be reapproved.
Every year?
If the home occupation has expanded beyond what was initially approved. Every year you have to just reapply for or renew your business license, and you just have to, it's basically just a checklist saying it hasn't expanded beyond what was approved. And then if it has grown beyond what it initially was, then they have to bring a new application forward.
So, all right, let's open for commissioner comment, and maybe my brain will work. Sorry, what? Oh, yeah, public hearing, actually. Let's open for public hearing. Public comment and hearing is now open. Seeing none, we'll close that. Perfect. And then open for commissioner comment.
From my perspective, as I read this, I think it gives us a whole lot more flexibility, and it goes back to that economic growth opportunity. Let me ask a couple of questions. If you have a home business where you are a service provider and you're working out of your home, my understanding is that your service vehicle has to be parked on your property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What if you work for an employer and you're allowed to take your vehicle home, and sometimes I've seen big pickup trucks with big trailers behind on the street that you can hardly get by because there's a smaller car on the other side. That does not fall within this, is that correct? Because
Correct.
we're talking about home occupation.
Correct.
Okay. It makes sense that if you do have an occupation in the home and you have a vehicle, that you do need to provide that. Just a comment, and I've shared this a couple of times. I'm concerned a little bit with the number of vehicles, bigger vehicles that are parked on some of our streets that are not designed to have those parked on the street. But that's just commentary on my part. And if we had an opportunity to look at that situation at a later date, I'd be in full support of that, because our streets, instead of getting bigger, are getting a little smaller. And I just know on my street there are probably, well, there are numerous vehicles that make it very difficult to pass. And then with kids playing in their front yard, kids can run out. It's a safety hazard from my perspective. But I see the benefit of this, of having more flexibility, but giving, I think, more specific focus for those home occupations. Thank you, Chair.
I just wanted to provide a point of clarity as well. When somebody comes in and requests one of these home occupation permits, they do so in conjunction with their business license for the business that they're operating out of their home. And what Joel was explaining was that it's their business license that needs to be renewed on a year-to-year basis, not necessarily their home occupation permit. And so if the business is changed or expanded, as Joel stated, then at that point in time that they would have to come back with a new home occupation permit, but it's the business license that they're renewing on a year-by-year basis.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
What does the approval process look like? You mentioned providing a parking plan. I think that is really important. And so what does that process look like? Who reviews and approves those plans?
Yeah, so it depends on the class. Class 1 and 2 are handled administratively. So when a business license comes to us, we get information on what they're doing, and they say, I'm hosting a daycare with 4 students per day in my home. And at that stage, we say, okay, this needs a home occupation application as well. Please submit these materials. So at this point, we would ask for a pickup drop-off plan. We would ask for a floor plan of the home to show what part of the home is being used for the home occupation. We'd ask for any relevant licensure, showing that they're licensed from the state to run a child care facility. And then we'd review that, and it's reviewed by Sarah, by the planning director, to ensure it's meeting all of our code requirements. For a class 3 home occupation, that's anything that is, I believe, above from 16 to 40 clients a day. So these are pretty high impact home occupations. Those actually come to you all as the approving body. And they would require all the same materials as well.
Okay. Any other commissioner comment? Commissioner Miles?
I just have one. This may not apply to this per se, but I've wondered with a lot of the new development, including around this area with parking near stop signs and adjacent to fire hydrants, it's not painted red anymore. Is that a new thing? Is that just we haven't gotten to that? Because I've noticed people are parking all the way up almost to the stop sign now and in front of the fire hydrants, but I never see even next door to the police station area, it's not even painted.
Red painted curbs are not a practice that the city generally has. It's a maintenance issue, so we've gone to no parking signs more than we rely on painting. You can move a sign easily. You can sandblast paint, but it's easier to make the adjustments with signage.
So that's not a code, you have to have some sort of marking or indication?
No,
Okay.
it's not in the code.
Okay.
But the signs make it as enforceable as if it were painted, correct?
Correct. That's the big thing, is making it enforceable with PD.
Go ahead.
I don't know if we have data on this readily available, but how many of these types of home occupations do we currently have? Like of the type we're planning to, the change would occur to which ones again?
It would allow any type of home occupation to be in any type of home, so long as they meet all of these standards. So they would still need to provide off-street parking, even if it's in a townhome or apartment.
How many home occupations do we have in the city? Do we?
I would, I'm not the only one that reviews them, but I would say I've probably looked at about 20 in the past year. That required a full application. We get a lot of like home offices, and those are just approved. But I would say class 2 home occupations, somewhere in 10 to 20 range, and probably had to deny 4 or 5 of them because of this requirement.
Chair, one other question. Joel, what's the difference and I think I've answered it, or I asked the question, the difference of working from home in your own office as compared to you being a office, home occupation, you'd need a business license for that address. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in theory, if you're a W-2 employee and you're not the owner of the business, then it's no different from just hopping online and playing games all day. But once you're collecting taxes and you're conducting business yourself, some companies hire people as independent contractors instead, and they would also typically need a business license.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I make a clarification on the no parking in front of hydrants. State code does restrict parking in front of hydrants, so it's enforceable. When we choose, if we see a problem, we consider adding signage there, but it is enforceable without the signage in that instance.
Okay, thanks.
It's enforceable by a fire truck ramming your car.
Well, as is how close you can park to a stop sign. That's state, that's
That
DMV.
was my
yeah.
understanding, yeah.
So this is going to get really technical for a second, and I'm going to try and keep it a little less, but we are we approve these home occupations, and specifically with preschools and daycares, our standards are just below what the state standards are to require certain licensing for those. And so there's this gray area where someone can have their business license and they can have the home occupation license through the city. And so they can open a preschool or a daycare in their home, but it's just below the state one. And so then they don't have to have the state licensing that comes in and does the actual safety checks for the children. And so that's been a problem for me for a long time, because I've actually seen quite a few problems arise from that. My background's in child welfare, right? So 20 years in child welfare, you're going to see some things. And so this is great. I do want to see this happen. I don't think that we should be limiting home occupations based on single family homes. But I think that just kind of borrowing on this standard that we're setting for safety for children, I think we should look at this. I think that this is one of those areas that we maybe need to bump up a little bit and have our requirements be the same as what the state does to have the state checks going on, so that we're keeping kids safe, right? Because it's not happening in our city. And this isn't your fault. This is me being very child safety forward. And so I would encourage that that we come back to this at some point and increase our standard, that that any home occupation, especially involving children, meets that state requirement, so that licensing and state inspections are happening, so that we have safety for children happening. And then I would just say that there is a mix. This isn't quite accurate. People are slipping through on these business. If you have your business license, that whatever's happened, like these home occupations, especially involving children, we don't have enough eyes on that. And when we allow it to be opened without having a state putting eyes on it, this is a problem. And so I think we need to do one of two things. We either need to make sure that we need to increase our checks on it, make sure that they are following the rules and they're following good rules, and we need to have more rules that are being followed similar to a state code and state licensing, or we need to make sure that they're being licensed under the state and having the state handle all of that. So all of this is great, and I do think we need to improve. I'm all for moving this along, but I think we do need to also come back to this and look at what we can do in that area.
And if I may speak to that, I really appreciate that input. I learned about that sort of gray area myself earlier this year when we had a couple daycare applications come to us. And I went to the, I believe it's the Department of Health, or the DHHS, forgetting what the acronym stands for, but they have a list of all child care providers in the state. And I did go through and I matched them to our approved home occupations, and I found all but one of them do have the higher tier of the licensing. We typically push pretty strongly asking for that. And the state, at least the way it's currently written, doesn't allow us to require the other because of the way our home occupation code is written. We can definitely look at seeing if there are ways that we can rewrite it where we could require that higher standard. But I know, at least in our city, there's only one child care provider right now. At least it's licensed and approved as a home occupation that's using that type of license.
Okay.
Yeah. There may be others out there that we don't know about, that we haven't gotten applications, and that's,
Ooh.
yeah. But that's what the state has on their registry, and that matches our approved home occupations.
Great.
So, yeah. And if there's any information otherwise, we would also love that as well. Our code enforcement team would love to know.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that. That's actually, I love to hear that, because that is what we want, right? We want kids to be safe, and
Absolutely.
we want to have that licensing coming in. Okay.
Thanks.
Perfect. All right, and Commissioner Roman.
Is there a baseline for the traffic increase? Because I know it says like keep it minimal.
Mm-hmm.
What's minimal? Like, and how do you gauge it from that point? Because neighborhoods, smaller streets.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a baseline for that, or how's that worked out?
So we're not typically asking for like a professional traffic engineer's plan with these. They tend to be on a small enough scale that you can kind of look at it and get a feel for if it's going to be an undue increase. So we do look at things like, okay, you're at the end of the cul-de-sac and you're sending 40 cars a day down to the end of the road. That might be more than minimal. So we are trying to look at those things. I wouldn't say we have any defined standards for what a minimal versus non-minimal impact is, but yeah.
But with that said, they do have limits on the amount of clientele or students that are per the application.
It's
So if
fluid,
it's,
though.
so-
That's the thing that I'm concerned about.
Is what?
It's fluid. Like they can be like today we have this many people. This is this people. Unless
The-
you're like Miss Cleo, you can see the future.
The class does lock them into the amount that they're allowed to have per day. So if you were a class 2 approved home occupation, you can have up to 8, I believe it's 8 clients at a time and 16 per day. And that includes deliveries. So if you're like a drop shipper and you're having packages picked up every 20 minutes, we would say over 16, that's class 3, that needs to go to the planning commission to look at a more serious traffic and parking study.
Yeah, I think that we've seen maybe 3 or 4 daycares in front of us over the last 8 months where we really look at, part of their plan is how many kids, and looking at the square footage in the daycare center, which limits some of that coming and going. I don't know how you, from a code enforcement, see that unless neighbors are saying, hey, there's a whole lot more and it is very congested. But I know when we go through the process, we're looking very carefully at the space, the kids, and then the traffic pattern created. And that's where sometimes they try to stagger that, so not all 8 parents are coming at the same time. There's some staggering, if I remember some of our discussions over the last couple of months.
And that's why we wanted to add that enforcement clause so that we do require them to stagger pickup and drop off time. And if they told us in their approved plan that that's what they're doing, and a neighbor tells us 20 cars show up at 7 a.m. every morning, then that gives us grounds to then go and see if that's the case and revoke that business license.
All right. Any more commissioner comment? Okay, we will go ahead and entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the proposed code amendment with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Mann. Do we have a second on this?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Roman. And any questions? All right, hearing none, we'll now vote. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Awesome.
Thank
Okay, and we'll go into commissioner comments and reports. I will not be here for the next meeting. Very much wish I would be instead of doing what I'm doing, but I won't be, so y'all need to prepare to run it. Okay, any other commissioner comment? Okay, seeing none, can we get a director's report?
Yeah, I know typically Sarah gives you a report of what happened at council. I don't have that information right in front of me, and I apologize for that. We can make sure that we bring that forward to you at your next meeting. Oh wait, Annalisa is going to pull it up here. Perfect.
That's okay, we can look it up ourselves if we haven't been following it. That's on us.
All right. Oh, yes, there was approval of the site plan for 2429 Stagecoach Drive. That was the one where they had the connection that was to the north that they were asking for an exception for, as well as the shared parking. I believe that the council carried the same recommendation that was made here at the Planning Commission, that that connection was not needed and that that shared parking would be allowed. And then, yeah, that wasn't brought here. I don't think there was anything else on that one that you guys had previously seen as part of your agenda. So I think that was the only one.
Okay. All right. And I assume we're not doing closed session tonight, like always. Perfect. All right. We will go ahead and adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.